we are getting to a really fun section. And this section is new in the exam. I think it's going to grow over time. Right now, they don't ask too many questions, and I think just watching this lecture should be enough for you to answer all the questions at the exam. But I wanted to expand that section into something a little bit bigger because I think it's really fun, and I think it is quite hands-on and really cool because it brings all the things we've seen in the serverless world before into one little framework. So this is SAM, and SAM is a curl, and it's also a serverless development framework which allows you to deploy your serverless applications onto AWS. So what does it do? Well, SAM stands for Serverless Application Model, and as I said, it's a framework you're going to write to deploy and code your serverless applications. All the configuration for your serverless applications is going to be YAML code, but not any YAML code. It turns out that it's actual CloudFormation code, and so from simple YAML code in the SAM format, we're going to generate complex CloudFormation code. And so we'll see how we do this using a simple command. Because our SAM code is just CloudFormation code, it supports anything that CloudFormation supports. So we can use outputs, mappings, parameters, resources, and any intrinsic function we can think of. It's only 2 commands to deploy to AWS, and we'll see this. And SAM can use code deploy to deploy our Lambda functions if we wanted to be super picky about how we deploy our Lambda functions. Finally, SAM can help us run Lambda, API Gateway, and DynamoDB locally, which I think is huge because using this capability, we don't need to deploy our Lambda function to test it out. We can just run our entire stack straight from our computer. Now, SAM, what does it look like and how does that work? Well, there is this transform header that indicates that it's a SAM template. And so you'll have this transform AWS serverless 2016-1031. And so this, when you see these things, you should get a hint at the exam. You see this transform header, it is a SAM template. And so this is a SAM type of question. Now you write your code and you can use 3 resources type that are brought in, especially by the SAM format, which is serverless function, serverless API, and serverless simple table. The function is going to be Amazon Lambda, the API is going to be API Gateway, and the simple table is going to be DynamoDB. So we have 3 helpers for resources that we're going to use in the hands-on anyway. And then to package and deploy, you can use AWS CloudFormation package as a CLI or SAM package if you use the SAM CLI. I believe the exam for now only asks about AWS CloudFormation package. And then when you have packaged your application, you deploy it using AWS CloudFormation deploy, SAM deploy. And I'll be honest, I think this covers pretty much all the questions you're going to have at the exam. So if you wanted to just skip, you can skip from now on, but I got more for you if you're just curious about how things work and, do it for real, not just for the exam. So let's do a deep dive into how SAM deployment works. CloudFormation package, how does it work? Well, we have our SAM template. It's a YAML file. Right now, I just put the little logo, but imagine it's a YAML file. And we also have our application code and optionally a Swagger file if we wanted to have an API gateway. And so by doing AWS CloudFormation package, what it will do is that it will upload the zip file of our code straight to the code S3 bucket. So we're going to have an S3 bucket that will hold all our deployments, our packaging for now, obviously. And then this function, AWS CloudFormation package, will also transform our SAM templates into a CloudFormation template. So this is why there was this transform from before. Basically, this transform indicates how CloudFormation should transform your templates into much more complex CloudFormation YAMLs. So why did we upload the code to S3? Well, also because this generated templates will have a reference to the uploaded code in S3. So here we have a very complex generated template. It's CloudFormation YAML. It's not something we have to maintain. It's something that it gets generated anytime we run the first command. Then we're going to run the second command called AWS CloudFormation deploy, and this will do a deployment of that generated template. What this will do in particular is that it will create and execute a change set. So change set is basically figuring out how CloudFormation should take its existing state and move it to the next state based on the modifications we have generated. So here's our change set, and CloudFormation will apply it to our stack, and our stack may be comprised of all the things we know from before. Could be API Gateway, Lambda functions, DynamoDB, or IAM policies. All of that is included into these generated CloudFormation templates. So this is just for the theory for SAM. If you get there, again, you're supposed to be good for the exam, but I want to dedicate this section to playing a little bit with SAM. So let's get started.